Let's see if I can get this on the first fucking take. What's going on, everybody? This is Sean of Raw Select Music. Today I want to talk about this record right here. This is the Lyman Woodard Organization Saturday Night Special, originally released on Strata Records in 1975, but reissued on BBE Records and 180 Proof Records, which is Amir's record label from DJ Khan and Amir fame. This was a record that I had built a lot of hype for in my subconscious. Ever since I saw it on my friend's record store that I used to go to about 8 years ago, and seeing the cover of this guy, I was immediately drawn to it. I mean, that cover photo, pretty striking. And then when I heard House Shoes talk about it on the now defunct Crate Diggers show that was on Fuse TV, I don't even know what it's called now, him talking about it, this record has just always stood out in the back of my mind. And it was a record for the longest time that I never thought I would be able to get my hands on. It was reissued by Wax Poetics Records back in 2009 and apparently sold out almost immediately. So in terms of rare jazz funk records, this guy has been in demand for a long time. So I'm really grateful that BBE and 180 Proof Records ended up reissuing this guy so I could finally get my hands on it. And now that I've actually listened to it, I wanted to share my thoughts and opinions of this record with you guys and let you know if my expectations for this record were actually met. So with that little introduction out of the way, let's talk about this guy. So a little bit of background about Lyman Woodard. Man, I do not understand. I feel like I have a mini stroke every time that I try to say that name. But anyways, Lyman Woodard was a Detroit jazz musician, keyboardist, piano player, who had been playing in the Detroit music scene for quite some time and was given the chance to make an album of his own, and that's where this record came from. And funny story about this picture, so for a photo shoot, ILW was asked to empty his pockets by a photographer, and this is what he had in his pockets. He has a gun, several what would appear to be at least $100, and it's hard to see, but apparently there's supposed to be some rolling papers on here. Well, at least that's what the original image was. So, and from what I can gather about this record, as I talked a little bit about with the Joy Unlimited record, this really feels like a kind of a library record to me. It's not so much a traditional sort of jazz funk record where it's a lot of instrumental workouts with musicians really showing off their chops. It really feels like more of a soundtrack project, in all honesty. So there's a lot of motifs, there's a lot of moods, there's a lot of musical ambience going on with all the tracks on here. And from doing a little bit of research, apparently this album was meant to be sort of the soundtrack of walking around Detroit back in the 70s. And if that was the overall mission of this record, then I have to say they did an absolutely impeccable job, because this album bleeds atmosphere. Similarly to one of my favorite modern funk records, L. Michaels Affair's Sounding Out the City, this album really just has a certain urban ambiance to it. From the opening track that has just like this sort of really gritty, nasty vibe with its use of, I guess, from what I heard, Mellotron strings, to that really funky organ riff and the creeping menace that underlines the melody of the opening track. I really like the way that this album starts off. And then it quickly shifts into easily my favorite track on this record, which is kind of surprising because it's not really a break or a funk heavy track, but it's just got like this really powerful, enveloping melody. And that track is Joy Road. It's really slow paced, it's really sort of grimy and slummy, but it's also got this between sort of the drama of the oppressive instrumentation on this song. There's actually like little bits of prettiness to this track. It's almost like the overcastness of a cloudy day and sun slowly peeping through. And it goes back and forth like this of the 5 minutes that this track goes on for. The next track on there, Belle Isle Days, goes into this sort of more Latin jazz sort of vibe. I really like the vibe on this. And it contains easily like one of the greatest breakdown solos I've ever heard, where it leads into this amazingly interesting and ear-catching drum break solo. It's not really so much a drum break in and the hip-hop boom-bappy sort of sounds of a drum break. But the drums break out and it goes into this percussive orgy that also ends with this really just amazing guitar picking. It sounds like bullets being loaded into a clip. It's so ear-catching and creates so many little mental images. It's just it's a really big standout track on here for me. Then another standout track on here for me is the track Chiba, which really has this, again, sort of Latin jazz up-tempo vibe to it, and it's got lots of grooves. It's got some great soloing in it. And once again, much like Belle Isle Days, it's also got this really, really cool drum solo that lasts for about 2 to 3 minutes, and it's absolutely incredible. I'm not really a guy that usually goes for drum solos, but it's so expressive and so powerful that it's one of the big standout moments on this album. And then the other tracks on here are all really good as well. I really like Creative Musicians, which has this nice sort of funky, almost jazz lounge singer-esque vibe to it, and it's one of the only vocal tracks on here. And I actually really like the sort of lounge singing that the vocalist goes for on this. And then the other tracks on here are also pretty solid. I really like On Your Mind, which is a nice little jazz funk workout. Alan Barnes, which is this nice little up-tempo number, which is really fun and really playful. And then Help Me Get Away, solid track, not one of the more memorable songs on here, but still solid enough. I'd say if I have one sort of minor complaint, and that's actually more towards the reissue and not the original pressing of this record, is it does feel like it's a little bit bogged down with alternate takes. There are 3 alternate takes to Saturday Night Special, and the first one that comes up on the B-side takes away a lot of the string elements and definitely gets it more into the dark, dirty, dank sort of jazz funk territory, and I like that track. But the last 2 alternate takes that are at the end of this record are essentially radio edits, and actually, in the case of Belle Isle Days, it strips the song of the solo and honestly takes away the unique selling point of that track, and just, it feels superfluous. It really doesn't do anything to really harm the quality of this record. It just feels, like I said, unnecessary. And the same goes for the 3rd alternate take on the title track, Saturday Night Special. And also, I do have one other minor complaint about this reissue, that I really do like the hard stock that they used for the sleeve here, but it does make it practically impossible to fit one of the 2 records that this album comes with into the sleeve, and I have to stick it in the middle of the gatefold or else risking damaging the record. That seems like sort of a design oversight, but I mean, again, doesn't really take away from the overall quality of this record. All that being said, were my expectations with this record met? Yes, absolutely. There is a reason I feel like this record is so sought after, because it, to me, in the whole sort of realm of jazz funk, the Lyman Woodard organization, Saturday Night Special, is a pretty unique entity. There's top-notch musicianship on here. There's some really cool compositions going on here. There's some really cool arrangements on here. And it definitely feels like a very unique record compared to a lot of the sort of samey, overly smooth jazz funk records that were probably coming out at the time. One thing that I almost neglected to mention about this record, and I actually think it works to the album's atmosphere and to its benefit, is some people have complained that this record has sort of a poor recording quality. I actually like that. It definitely has almost like a punk rocky sort of garage quality to the music, and I actually really like that about this record. Some people might be turned off about it. I'm not turned off about it. It was originally sort of surprising when I first heard it, but as I've listened to this record more and more, I actually like that aesthetic sound. So were my expectations for this record met? Absolutely. Actually, I feel like they were sort of exceeded. There's some top-notch musicianship on here, some great arrangements, some really cool moments, some really, really funky tracks, and overall, it's a record that I found myself listening to a lot last year. And I highly recommend that if you have not picked up the Wax Poetics reissue, or don't have the money to fork over for the original, definitely grab this reissue if you still can, because this is one of the best jazz funk records I've ever heard, and it comes highly recommended. So yeah, Lyman Woodard Organization Saturday Night Special, definitely give this guy a listen. So that's gonna be it for me today, guys. Thanks as always for watching. If you've listened to this record, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments. Always love hearing from you guys. If you want to check this record out for yourself, please head over to my WordPress or Steemit blogs, because that's where I post music links so you can check these records out for yourself. And please head over to my Raw Select radio show on Mixcloud, because you will hear me play records such as this and a whole assortment of other music that I don't get a chance to talk about on this channel, and you can hear a whole wide variety of music that I listen to. Links for that is always down in the description. So that's gonna be it for me today, guys. Thanks as always for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. Till then, peace out!